Hello students, Dr. Smith here. I just want to take a few minutes to congratulate you on joining the online course again. By now you have probably completed the Canvas online tutorial so that you know how to go through Canvas well. You've probably already completed the original welcome video so that you know how to navigate the pages and modules in your course and how to proceed with your weekly assignments. Periodically, you will have some instructional notes from me, and those instructional notes can be feedback sometimes on particular assignments that we're working on, but oftentimes it will be just like this particular video for today, which is intended to really just give you a quick overview of what the objectives are for the particular lesson and lessons this week, and to also give you a possible way of entering into your major assignment. So first of all, to kind of get started, you'll notice that I've kind of put a bamboo plant here just for decoration, but also just to kind of illustrate something. You know, sometimes when we talk about writing can be something that is both glorious and exciting and wonderful and very frustrating at times as well, because writing is one of those things that comes from the heart as well as from the mind. And occasionally there are times when it's difficult to get to this stage where you have this beautiful plant and you have the, you know, all of the beautiful foliage and everything comes together into this beautiful story or this beautiful written work. But it didn't happen overnight. This particular plant took a long time to grow and to become the plant that it is now. Just like any other living thing, you know, it starts with the germ of a seed, with some small, you know, some small entity that eventually grows into the stalks and the foliage, and if it's a blooming plant, the flowers, for instance. And writing can be somewhat like that in a way. When we talk about the different parts of the writing process and how we generate ideas for writing, you know, it often starts with that germ of, you know, maybe not a seed, but an actual idea. It might start with a particular moment that we remember in time, or it could be something that we read recently that inspires us to ask some really critical questions about what's going on in our world. It can be a lot of different things that we might ask about. And from that germ of a seed, we generate some ideas. We start brainstorming. We start putting some ideas down on paper. Sometimes it might be in the form of just a quick free write where we just write down whatever comes to mind, and it might be a little bit of a mishmash at first. Sometimes it's a little more organized. We might actually create a visual map, a cluster map, or a storyboard, something that kind of lays everything out for us visually so that we can see categorically what we want to say and how we want to say it. And eventually we come up with the stalk, or maybe the trunk of the tree, the thesis. What is the, you know, what is the crux of what we want to get to? What's the big picture that we want to get to? And what do we want to write about and why? What's the situation? And eventually then, you know, all of these beautiful leaves start branching off because we have the main stalks that come off of the thesis and that tell us different aspects of what we want to talk about. So maybe we want to talk about, you know, beauty. And the thesis is that, you know, beauty is only skin deep. And then one offshoot of that is, well, where did that idea come from? And, you know, where did this idea come from about beauty being, you know, only skin deep, or beauty being represented in other ways? So then there might be another stalk that talks about that issue of beauty and how we define it in another way. Perhaps another stalk comes off and we draw some comparisons between what one person's vision of beauty is and what another person's vision of beauty is. And then eventually we have this beautiful piece of writing that talks about what beauty means to that person. With that in mind, I want to start talking a little bit about what you're going to be working on this week. So first of all, the purpose of your major assignment that you will be working on over the next few weeks is to explore personal writing and to kind of start with what you're familiar with. Most of us are familiar with first-person I writing. Most of us are familiar with writing a personal story of some sort. So we're going to start there. So you're going to be exploring different examples of narrative writing. You're going to be developing an understanding of how those invention processes or pre-writing processes can help you to generate ideas. Again, some of this might be review for you, but eventually you may find that there are certain aspects of pre-writing that you haven't tried out very often. Let's say that you're a free writer, that you sit down and you just put the ideas down on paper. Well, does that work for you all the time? If it doesn't, what else is in your toolbox? What else can you use? Do you try to build a mind map where you put your idea in the center of your page and then put out particular feelers for or leaves of ideas as to what else you want to talk about? How do those ideas map out visually to create what it is that you want to say? And also you're going to be practicing and applying some different forms of pre-writing then to that process of writing. And essentially you're going to be making decisions about what are the best invention tools for you for the purpose of your writing, but then also who's the particular audience that you're appealing to? How are you going to generate a different kind of essay based upon that audience? Or is it going to be the same regardless of who the audience is? So as you begin your work, this is kind of your chance to review. Review what works best for you as a writer and a thinker. When you think about your writing process, and I want you to think about it very carefully. I don't want you to think about it in terms of what the writing process is supposed to be. I want you to think about it in terms of your writing process and what strategies seem to work for you in certain instances. What strategies do you use over and over again? At what point do you get stuck? And then if you do get stuck, then what else do you do? Do you go talk to someone? Do you find another way of thinking about or approaching the topic? So do you try to compare or describe or define the problem? How do you take a look at that particular issue or topic from a different angle? Do you like to map your ideas out? Do you like to cluster? Do you like to free write? Or is there another invention tool that you've used that's helped you in the past? So give yourself a chance to kind of dig into that writing process again and really be mindful of not only the stages in the process and how you develop your ideas. Excuse me. This is live, so I may be sneezing once in a while. Also think about how do you get from that initial idea stage to actually drafting that first draft of your essay? How do you get to that point? So this journey is going to start with the most basic part of the writing process. And by the time you get done with week 3, you will have a fully developed, beautiful final product. So whatever you do, I want you to use this week's readings and lessons and assignments to experiment, if that isn't clear to you yet. I want you to explore different ways of developing your ideas for the first project essay, such as your autobiographical narrative. The autobiographical narrative is a true story. It's a true story that you write about yourself and about some aspect of your own personal experience based upon the assignment parameters for this handout. To help you get started, there are a number of resources that I've posted for you this week, including some excerpts from Annie Dillard's story called The Eclipse. You'll find that this is a very dense piece. It's a very descriptive piece. Annie Dillard is very good at descriptive detail and using what's called figurative language. Look for examples of simile and metaphor. Look for examples of comparisons and personification in her descriptions. You'll find that what she writes is very, very dense and very, very descriptive. Next, I want you to review your Project 1 assignment handout in detail. This gives you the nuts and bolts, how many pages, what parameters for the topic. It tells you everything that I expect from you for this particular paper. If you have questions, then please contact me so that I can clarify any questions you might have. What possible topics and situations might be appropriate to develop your personal narrative? Those are some things you'll want to consider as well. So to get you started, let's start with maybe developing some ideas with a journal entry. So this is the point where you might want to pause and go get a notepad and pen or paper, or go back to your another computer. Maybe you have your iPad with you. However it is that you most comfortably jot down ideas. And then come back and let's start your journal entry to help you generate some ideas for the Project 1 essay. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. First of all, I want you to take a moment. Think about a time when you had to overcome an obstacle or a challenge. And again, for each point in the process of this journaling, go ahead and pause wherever you need to in this video to give yourself some time and some space to write. Give yourself a few minutes and then come back. Point 2. After you've thought about maybe a particular obstacle or challenge, maybe it's a snapshot of some experience that you've had, and it doesn't have to be a profound one. It can be something big or it can be something little. I want you to list several words and phrases to describe that situation. What are the words and phrases that describe that situation? So for example, let's say that in the very first marathon that you ran, you tripped and fell. And, this was a very, this was a very public event. So, it was a little bit embarrassing. What was the scene? Set the scene for us. How did it happen? What was going on around you? What were your thoughts? What were your feelings? How did other people react? Jot down as much as you can think about. Just little words, phrases that come to mind that help you to kind of recall that situation again. Now, at this particular point in time, if you're a visual learner, you might want to actually create a storyboard of that experience. A storyboard is kind of like, if you've ever seen in the newspaper where you have a series of pictures for cartoon series, and every picture focuses in on the next, the next set of images and the next scene and the next experience that's taking place. A storyboard can kind of help you to visualize what you recall about that experience. So if it helps to do that, go ahead and do something like that as well. Okay. Now that you've listed some ideas and some thoughts about that particular moment in time, I want you to take a few minutes now to free write about that particular situation. I want you to now give yourself the time to just get the ideas down. Describe what happened, what you saw, what you experienced, what you heard. Sensory details can be really helpful. What were the colors? What are the textures and feels? What were the smells in the air? If there's a description that involves taste or touch, describe it with all your senses, or as many of your senses as is reasonable for that particular experience. And then, how did you feel? What were your thoughts? What were your inner thoughts? What were your feelings? How did you react both physically and emotionally to that experience? And I want you to focus on expressing those initial thoughts as they come to you. Don't worry about going back and revising. This is a free write, which means you are free to just get the ideas down on paper. Don't worry about the grammar at this point. You can worry about it later. Is it important? Of course it is, when you're ready to publish. But for right now, you're getting the ideas down. So free write it out. Don't worry about whether you go off on a slight tangent or not. If you do, take yourself back and just remind yourself of what your focus is, and you'll be fine. So take a few minutes to do that and then come back. Next, I now want you to take what you've done with your initial journaling, your initial free write, and in a sentence or two, I want you to write down the lesson or the observation that you made after reflecting upon this experience. You got it? Okay. That could become your theme or your thesis. That can become your trunk or your focal point for the entire essay. So now, at this particular point, you might want to create an outline of some sort. It could be a formal outline, or it could be an informal, creative outline. Whatever helps you to organize your thoughts. Think about main ideas and details. So the main idea might be the stalk coming off of your main part of your plant. The details might be these beautiful, beautiful leaves that are coming down that tell us a little bit more about the experience. What are those details? What details do you want us to understand about that particular experience? Think also about what is the order of information that's going to make the most sense. What's going to come first, second, third? What details logically make sense? Are you going to be writing about this in chronological time? In other words, in the order in which things happen? Or are you going to be organizing ideas spatially in terms of where things happen in terms of location? What are the ways that you're going to organize your ideas and why? And then think about, how are you going to attract your reader's interest? Who is your target audience? Who is going to be interested in what you have to write about? And then what can be done with this new information that you've gathered? What do you ultimately want your readers to walk away with and understand? Is your purpose going to be entirely to entertain? Is your purpose going to be to establish some sort of a lesson or a moral? Or is your purpose going to be to try and persuade us to look at something from a different perspective or a different angle? What would be the reason for communicating your story today? Okay, so when you feel that you have enough material to build a more structured draft, then I want you to go for it. Write down that one sentence, that one overarching sentence that becomes your thesis or your theme. Keep that as your central trunk, as your focal point for continuing. Keep that theme in mind. Continue developing your ideas. And then continue going back to examples. Look for examples in the library of different kinds of narrative writing. Look for examples wherever you go of people telling their stories. How do they go about doing that? What strategies can you borrow? And how are you going to develop your own style out of this? Because ultimately, what I want to see is your style, your voice, your vocabulary expressing your own original thoughts, okay? So, if you have questions as you move on, please contact me. I hope that this initial journal entry helps you to move on your way. Please make certain that you review all of the lessons and materials as you begin working on your autobiographical narrative. As we progress further, get prepared next week for sharing in peer review. So do be sure that the particular topic you choose to write about is something that you're going to be comfortable sharing in a small online group of peers, usually about 3 to 4 people per group. Okay? Have a wonderful week, and let's keep in touch. I will see you online.